Leviticus chapter 25. We're coming towards the close of Leviticus, and at this juncture takes a slightly different turn. So far, we have been seeing things concerning the sacrifices, the atonements, the rules towards more severe actions against God, things that has a penalty of death, like execution, to be cut off, to be stoned to death, and so on and so forth. And then you could see that although there are rules pertaining to general individuals with regards to being clean, there are specific rules that is given to the priests, and then more specific rules given to the high priest, particularly in the area of marriage, as well as death in the family. Because if you remember, touching a dead person will make a person unclean. And so they are more severe in that sense given to the priest and the high priest. Now, once we cross all these hurdles in terms of rules to them, of what to eat, what not to eat, and basically to show themselves how they are different. So remember, holy is about being different, being set apart. Is to be used by God. It must be particular care must be taken. Now, when it comes to chapter 25, it deals with the Sabbath. We've seen Sabbath with regards to the seventh day of the week. Then we have seen Sabbaths being appointed to specific feasts, the beginning and the end of the feast itself. Today, we are going to look at something which is seldom talked about, but it exists in the Levitical laws with regards to the land. Because they are an agriculture nation, God has given specific rules. Now, one of the things that we have read in the book of Deuteronomy is that God is bringing them into a land that is filled with milk and honey. But more importantly is for them to trust God so that there will be rain, the early rain and the latter rain, so that they could harvest. And it will be a very fertile place for the Israelites to live in as long as they are obedient to God. Now, in chapter 25 comes a rule regarding what they are to do with the land. We have read earlier that when they get into the land for 3 years, they're not supposed to touch anything, not supposed to eat anything. On the 4th year, it is holy to God. It is to be set aside, and they're not to eat it as well. But on the 5th year onwards, there'll be lots for them to eat, and then they will begin to enjoy the land. In chapter 25, God said to Moses on Mount Sinai. Now, in this case, you find that it's a different place already. So chapter 25 is a different environment. It is in Horeb. He says, speak to the children of Israel and say this to them. When you come into the land which I give you, this is very important for them to realize that the land is what God is giving to them as a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by covenant. So God tells them this, the land shall keep a Shabbat to the Lord. The Sabbath is understood in Genesis chapter 2 as the 7th day of the week. But the emphasis in Genesis chapter 2 as well, that many people missed out, is that it is regarding a rest. They shall keep a Shabbat to the Lord. And this means a rest or a cessation, a stop work. Okay? The land shall stop work. So not only the people stop work, but the land needs to stop work as well. So in verse 3, it says, 6 years you shall sow your field, 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. Now, this is where it's a key to all the discussions we have. 6, because the 7th year would be the Shabbat year. And you sow, and then you prune your vineyard, and then you gather the fruit. Now, what does this mean? It means that you actually do 3 major things in working the ground. You sow seeds when you begin to plant, and you till the ground. And with the vineyard, you need to prune. Pruning is a very important aspect of planting grapes. And so you need to work on the grape plant itself, the vineyard. And then when the fruits are in season, you will gather them, and that is what we call the harvest. And so we learn one major thing here that God is showing us, that what you sow, you will reap. That's the principle. You sow and you reap. And that is what God is trying to teach them. You have to do your work, and then you will gather its fruit. And based on that, it has to be based on the rule that God has given. He says, in the 7th year, there shall be a rest, a solemn rest for the land. And this is in verse 4. It says that the 7th year is a Shabbat. It is a Shabbat to the Lord, right? A Shabbat to the Lord is a rest to the Lord. And in this particular instance, a solemn rest to the land is something like an observance, like a feast. Remember the feast days, right? In the feast days, you observe the date. So you must know the time of the year, the month of the year, and then the day of the month, and then from which day to which day, and you observe, and then there is a Shabbat. And so in this case, you need to be very careful that there are appointments that you need to keep, and this is a rest. It's all about the rest. And then it says, you do not sow, you do not prune, and basically you also do not reap. Okay, so let's take a look at verse 5. Now verse 5 tells you that what grows on its own accord of your harvest, you do not reap, you don't gather the grapes of your unintended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. Now this is what is important. We talked about not to sow, not to prune, and if you do that, you also do not reap or gather. And so for 6 years, you do these 3 things, right? You sow, you prune, you reap and gather. But in this 7th year, you do none of this because it is a year of rest. I think this was very clear, right? It's a year of rest. And the Shabbat, let me just highlight this. Ignore this word. It does not exist. The Shabbat of the land shall be food for you to eat. Now, this is what I think verse 6 is saying, right? Verse 6. See, people also will be alive and kicking, and they need to eat, right? So if you don't sow, you don't prune, and you don't reap, then what are you going to eat? So God says, in that Shabbat year of rest for the land, the things will still grow by itself. It will still grow. But you are not to touch the land. Don't work on the land. Don't dig the land. Don't sow any more seeds. Let it rest. But while you say it, let it rest, there still be things growing by itself, right? By itself. And God is saying, well, whatever grows out there, you can go and pluck it to eat. For you, your servants, your hired man, the stranger who dwells with you, for the livestock to eat, for the beast that is in your land, all its produce shall be for food. Which means this will be a natural year. A year where you don't touch the land, you don't do anything to the land, and you just let the land rest, and whatever grows will be food for everybody. That's what I think verse 6 is saying. But one of the challenges the smart Israelites will think is, maybe there's not enough to eat. And maybe you're right. Well, let's go on to the next section before we come back to the eating part. Okay. I want to now talk about the Jubilee. Okay, in verse 8 onwards. Verse 8 onwards says this, and you shall count. Remember that the first time the Israelites were told to count was for the Pentecost, the Shavuot, where they will count 7 Shabbats, and the day after the 7th Shabbat would be the 50th day. That would be after the Passover. And that would be the Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, right? The Shavuot. And so now he says, you shall count 7 Shabbats of years, not just weeks, 7 Shabbats. So Shavuot, 7 Shavuot of 7 times 7 years. 7 times 7 years. And the time of 7 Shabbats of years shall be to you 49 years. So just like Pentecost, now you're counting years. Then you shall cause the trumpet. The trumpet here would be shofar. So you blow the shofar on the year of Jubilee. This one says the Shabbat, you blow the Shabbat, the sound of the Shabbat of the Jubilee on the 10th day of the 7th month. Remember, the 7th month and the 10th day is the Day of Atonement. And so on the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, the 50th year, okay, 9 and 49 years, and then you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, and make it sound throughout the land, and you shall consecrate. Verse 10, you shall make holy the 50th year, which is the year after the year of Jubilee. Then that would be the Jubilee, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land of its inhabitants. That will be throughout the land of Israel. It shall be a Jubilee to you. Okay? And each of you shall return his possession, and each of you shall return to his family. Now, we'll deal with this a little bit more. Let me just point out to you. Liberty here is really about freedom. Okay, this is to proclaim freedom. freedom to freedom to servitude, and freedom to borrowings. And this would be the 50th year, right? The 50th year. And so proclaim liberty throughout all the earth. And then they will sit, and the word Jubilee really is Yovel, and it is with reference to blowing the shofar. So the word Jubilee is a very interesting word because we think of Jubilee as a name. But remember, in the Hebrew context, names are all actions and events. And so Jubilee is a joy. When you blow the shofar, and you'll be all over the place for the entire year, it is a recognition that this is a particular year of freedom, and to return his possession and return to the family. Whatever you have borrowed, whatever you owe, whatever you have served, things will be settled in this time. So you have to count 7 times 7. That's 49 years. And then the next year would be the 50th year, and that would be the holy year. Verse 11. That 50th year shall be a jubilee to you, right? Jubilee, again, is blowing the horn year. You can call that, right? The 50th year shall be the blowing of the horn year to you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap nor gather. Okay, that would be similar to the Shabbat year, or that is the 7th year. So you don't sow, you don't reap, you don't gather, which is the same, right? For it is the Jubilee, the blowing of horn, it's freedom. It shall be holy to you. So what are you going to eat? You will eat the produce from the field. Now, again, this one tells us a bit more clearer. The field would mean that whatever is natural out there, you can go and eat. That's what it means. Whatever is naturally out there, you just eat. But you don't go and gather and put it into a barn and so on and so forth, because it is a rest, and you just eat from its natural habitat. So that's what I think verse 6 was saying. And so verse 12 is saying that on the 50th year, you do exactly what you do for the Shabbat year. Now, the interesting thing is this. For every 7 years, you rest. And so for every block of 50 years, you look at this, right? Every block of 50 years. So I have 1, 2, and then the 7th Shabbat. Okay? And this would be your 49th year. And then on the 50th year, it is also a rest. So for every 50 years, there are an equivalent of 7 plus 1 Shabbat year. You can see that? And this will be very interesting, because when you hit the 49th year, you are not sowing, you're not reaping, you're not gathering already. And then on the 50th year, 2 years, you don't work the ground. That is what this says so far from verse up to verse 12. Okay, up to verse 12. Now, if you look at this, verse 13 tells us this: in this year of blowing the horn year, each of you shall return to his possession. This is important. What do you mean, return to his possession? It means to go back to your own property. What were you doing if you weren't at your property? Because some of them are poor, they owe money, and they sell themselves to the masters, the people whom they borrow money, and they serve the masters. This appears to sound like slavery. But in this case, in the idea of God, that if you have no money and you need the money and you owe people money, then you go and work for that person whom you lend the money, whom you borrowed the money from, until you finish paying up. Now, if you don't finish paying up, and this is the year of Jubilee, God says, well, whatever you owe is over. You can return home now. That is what it means here. Verse 14, if you sell anything to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor's hand, you shall not oppress one another. Now, this word oppress is important. Oppress literally means to treat badly, mistreat. And this is important for them to remember, because when they were in Egypt, they were mistreated by the masters of the land, the Egyptians. And so God tells them, you're all brothers, you're all my children, my people. So whatever you do with each other as you trade and buy and sell, look here, sell and buy, you do not mistreat each other. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, you shall buy from your neighbor, and according to the number of years of crops he shall sell to you. So according to the multitude of years, you shall increase its price. You can see there is an inflation rate. Yeah, I call it inflation rate. Okay. So every year you can increase price. And according to the fewer number of years, you shall diminish its price. And that is a very interesting thing. For he sells to you according to the number of years of the crops. So you can actually rent the land and then you pay back by the crops. So and basically, if you have this period that you rent the land and you have to give it up this way, and then it comes down. Okay, so it increases and then it decreases. So what you give more upfront, and once you are shorter in the tenure, you give less. And the idea here is that you have worked very hard to pay for it, and so now you will get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Therefore, you shall not mistreat one another. And while you deal with each other, this is the key here. While you deal with each other, you shall fear your God. For Ani Yehovah Eloheka. Right? Eloheka. So I am the Lord your God. Why do they have to think that way? Fear means to be afraid. Don't mistreat your fellow men, because God will deal with you. That is what this law is about. That whatever God has given you and you do a deal with your neighbor, do not mistreat the deal. God is there, God is watching, and whatever you do, think about the judgment God will bring. That is what God wants them to know. I am God. I am the God who led you out of Egypt. And so don't treat them like the Egyptians treat you. And so God says, this is how you must keep my statutes. Verse 18. Observe means this is what you should be doing, right? And this is what I tell you, and this is what you should do, and this is what you should guard, my judgments, and then you perform them. You will do them, and then you can stay in the land safely. What do you mean by safely? That with trust. You can trust God and have confidence. That is what it means. When you do what God tells you to do, you can have confidence in God. Then God says, then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill, and you will dwell there with confidence. That's what it means. So God is giving them a promise, really. I have given you the land, and I'm giving you the land. This is how you should work on the land. You work on 6 years, 7th year, you don't touch. Whatever it grows, you eat. On the then you count 7 sets of Shabbat years. That would be 49 years. And then the next year would be the year of Jubilee. And you also don't sow, don't reap, don't gather. And then God says, if you do all this, you can have confidence in me that I will give you enough to eat. Eat your fill. It's like the durian shops, all you can eat. Because that's how God is going to give them a land flowing with milk and honey. Now comes the interesting Jewish questions. What Jewish questions do you think they will come out with? Verse 20, it says, if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year? Remember the 7th year, you don't sow, you don't gather. What are you going to eat? Sounds very Chinese, huh? What are you going to eat? Well, we read in verse 6 and then in verse 12, well, whatever grows out there naturally, you can eat. Your animals can eat, but you just don't touch the land. So don't do anything to make the land work. See, when you prune the vine, then the vine will soak up more from the ground. That's working the ground. So you don't touch the vine. It will bear grapes naturally, but don't do any more than that. No? So it'll be back to nature. So verse 20 says, what are you going to eat? So God says, this is what I will command. See, God is not just going to give his blessing. God is going to command my blessing on you in the 6th year. That is a very interesting statement in verse 21. For God to command, give a command to the earth, give the command to the environment. I will bless you. That is what it means. This is the blessing that you will get. You mean that every year they will get, it's not called a blessing? Well, every year they get is by natural. They listen to God, and God will just give the rain in due time. But there will be something special on the 6th year. So I will bless that year, and this year will bring forth enough for 3 years. You see, the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year begins the 1st year cycle, right? So look at what it says here. You do the work here, you don't do the work here, And then when you start doing the work here, you can't harvest, nothing to eat until end of the year. So how many years do you need to eat? 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let me just correct this. 1, after you plant for the 6th year, at the end of the 6th year to the end of the 7th year is 1 year. At the end of the 7th year to the end of 8th year is 2nd year. End of 8 years to the end of 9th year, remember, that will be the 3rd year. So you can start harvesting here. And so God says, I'll give you more than enough. So just in case there is a late rain and you don't get your harvest, you still have 3 years. That's what God is saying. I'm giving you more. That's why you call it a blessing. More than it normally has. And so when you sow in the 8th year and eat all produce until the 9th year, until the produce come in, you shall eat of the old harvest, which is 1, 2, and 3. Okay? This is what it means. So God is saying, don't worry, when I give you the rule, I will also make sure that it is provided for. So God is a God who provides. But why does he do this? I mean, why count to 6 and then 7th year you don't do? And after that you count to 49 and then 50th year also you don't do? Because there could be a case like this. That this could be the 49th year. And then 50th year, you also don't plant. And then the 51st year, then you still have enough to eat. So God says, don't worry, whether it's Shabbat, whether Shabbat year, or whether it's a Jubilee, taken care of. God only wants them to follow the rules. You see, when God gives them these rules, God wants them to trust God. These are the words. The word safety is actually confidence. Have confidence in God. Don't trust in yourself. Have confidence in God. And everything will be fine. If you trust yourself, things will not be fine. That is what the rules are for. Verse 23, when you sell the land, it cannot be permanent, meaning you cannot sell it to forfeiture. Forfeiture means perpetuity, which means what? It cannot be freehold, right? Not freehold. It is always leasehold. It cannot be permanent. It cannot be perpetual. Why? You need to understand that God gave the land to the Israelites. And when God gave the land to the Israelites, he also divided the land to every tribe. And knowing the economics within the land, some people will be rich, some people will be poor, some will have more, some will have less, and then there will be some adjustments. But God says this, even though you adjust using the value of the land cannot be given to the new owner forever. That's what it means. You cannot do that. It is for leasehold. It cannot be for freehold. God says, the land is mine. You were strangers and sojourners with me. And in all the land of your possession, you shall grant redemption of the land. What is redemption of the land? Redemption is the right to buy back. So when somebody has a piece of land and he needs money and he sells you the land, and when you give money for the land as if you were bought, God says it cannot be permanent. The original owner has a right to buy it back. That is what it means for this law. So you look at this. God knows that along the way there will be challenges for different families. Some families become richer. Some families become poorer. And so if one of your brethren becomes poor and has sold some of his land to you, and if his redeeming relative comes to redeem it, so not only the man who sold it, but within the tribe, in his family, comes to buy back. Okay, that's what it means, to buy back. He may redeem what his brother sold. This is to make sure the land still stay within the tribe. Or if the man has no one to redeem it, there will be a situation, right? There is no relatives left to help him. But he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale and restore the remainder to the man whom he sold it, that he may return to his possession. Now, what does this mean? There is a math to this banking loan, you can call it. Now, this is what it means. Let him count the years since its sale and restore the remainder to the man whom he sold it. Everything ends with the Jubilee. That's the rule that God has given. So if you sold it here and there is a period towards the Jubilee, then you pay back the number of years. And then here you can redeem it. That's what it means. So if there are, and that there's a price to it, obviously. Okay. But if he is not able to have it restored to himself, then what was sold shall remain in the hand of him who bought it until the year of Jubilee, and in the Jubilee release, and he shall return to his possession. So if this guy now looks at the number of years, they say, oh dear, I can't pay it. Well, when it comes to the year of Jubilee, he gets it back for free. Because the year of Jubilee is the year of freedom. That is what it means. He shall return to his possession. The land is given back to this man. One of the things you will see is this, that when you are rich, God will make sure that the rich will never get richer perpetually. There is a period where the rich will enjoy his fruits, but comes the year of Jubilee, everything goes back to zero. That whatever you have appreciated or that you have enjoyed, the land will go back to its original owners. That's what it means. So that the land doesn't change in its size, that is given to the tribes. Now, let's look at this. There's another one here that is going to be based on the then culture. If a man sells a house in a walled city, you need to understand that in those days there are cities that have walls, okay? And then there are houses inside. There are also houses outside. This one here would be the house in the walled city. Okay? And of course, the house in the walled city is worth more than the house outside the city. Because when enemies come, the first to go is the one outside the walled city. So let's continue. Then he may redeem it within a whole year after it's sold. And within a whole year, he may redeem it. But if it's not redeemed within the space of a whole year, then the house in the walled city shall belong permanently to him who bought it throughout his generations. Now we get a freehold. But notice, freehold only comes with houses. It doesn't come with the land. It is the house. So that when it comes to the year of Jubilee, it is not released to the owner. He's gone. He sold it. Right? He sold it. Now let's look at 31. Right? 31 onwards. However, the houses of villages which have no wall around them shall be counted as fields of the country. So remember, in the wall, it's property of the house, not the land. But if there are houses in the country, in the fields, right, they may be redeemed and they shall be released in the Jubilee. Now, what is the difference? And that's what you need to ask yourself a question. If it's within the wall, okay, let me just draw this back. If this house is within the wall, this house is sold as a property of the house and it's permanent. And then if you have a house that's outside, right? And this is where everything grows. This house is considered part of the field. And because it's part of the field, it's treated as possession. Because you plant things there and you grow, and that's part of the land. Here is not part of the land because you can't grow anything inside the walled cities. Okay, that's what it means. So nevertheless, so in the year of Jubilee, it's given back, just like before, okay? Verse 32 is concerning the cities of the Levites. The cities of the Levites are in the walled cities, and the houses in the cities of their possessions, the Levites may redeem any time. So what is there? For the Levites, when they sell it, they can buy it back anytime. If a man purchases a house from the Levites, then the house that was sold in the city of his possession shall be released in the Jubilee. There's an exception. If it belongs to a Levite, don't touch. Year of Jubilee, freedom. For the houses and the cities of Levites are their possessions among the children of Israel, because they have no land. So the only thing they have is that they have their own houses. So if they have to sell their houses, they will get back the houses in the year of Jubilee. But the field of the common land of their cities may not be sold, for it is their perpetual possession. Now, one of the things that is little known, because we talked about the possession that is given to the 12 tribes. But within the 12 tribes, each of them would have given some land to the Levites so that they can actually graze their animals. And so that would be the fields. So they have fields. They don't have land parcels, right? They don't have land parcels. They have places to feed their flock. And God says those places belong to them. And it's purely for their own use. They don't make money out of that, right? They don't have more out of that. They don't have more. Now we come to lending to the poor. That's another rule. Now, one of the things you have realized since is that God takes care of those who can't take care of themselves. Who are they? The fatherless, who are the orphans. The ones without husbands, no man in the family, the widows. And third, the poor, where they have no money and no ability. And the fourth group of people that God takes care is also the strangers. Because God wants the people to take care of them, not to mistreat them like how the Egyptians mistreated them in Egypt. So if one of your brethren, meaning the Israelites, become poor and falls into poverty among you, I mean, he really becomes poor, then you shall help him like a stranger or a sojourner, meaning not an Israelite who live around you, but treat him well that he may live with you. Take no interest from him. This is important. When you lend him money, you only take back what you lend. You don't take interest. This is important. Because you're not a bank. This is not a bank lending. This is to help the poor. But fear your God that your brother may live with you. You are actually fearing God by taking care of your poor brethren. 37. You shall not lend him your money for interest, nor lend him your food at a profit. If you have earned it for, say, a shekel, you shall sell it to him for a shekel. Because you cannot treat the poor like you do business. I am the Lord your God. Ani Yehovah Elohekeh, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give the land of Canaan to be your God. So don't treat your poor brethren like the Egyptians treat you. You shall treat the poor brethren like how God treats you. Help him like the stranger, like the sojourner, right? Do not take interest. Do not make a profit. This is a very important thing so that the poor will have this. This is something which we seldom talk about. The poor will have dignity. This is absolutely important. This is the rule to lending the poor. Do not treat them like dirt. Do not treat them like no value. Human dignity is respected, as you can see. That is the importance of helping them out. When they have no money, just lend them and don't take interest. When they need food and you sell them food, then don't ask for profit. That's basically what it is. Don't treat them like how the Egyptians treat you. That's why you're holy. You're special. Now, concerning slavery, we call it slavery because that is the modern term. That's the modern term. Okay. But let's take a look at this. This is how God deals with what we call slavery. If one of your brethren who dwells with you becomes so poor and he sells himself to you, he says, I need money, I can't pay you back, I will serve you. So you shall not compel him to serve as a slave. This is important. Verse 39 differentiates the Israelite from the non-Israelites. So the poor brother he sells himself to, I mean, when a person sells himself to you, what does it mean? I'm selling myself so that I have money and I work for you to pay back. And so you shall not compel him to work like a slave. This would be also called a servant. Okay. Now, what do you do then? What is he to you? What is he to you? When he says, I am selling myself to you, you must not make him your slave. That is what it is. Don't make him work like a servant. And God says in verse 40, you should treat him like a hired hand. This is a worker. Is there a difference? This will be a paid worker. Like when you need help and you hire somebody to help for you, okay? When it is your brethren, you treat him like that. But he has borrowed money and he can't pay it back yet. So this is what you do. Treat him like a hired hand or a visitor that he is dwelling with you. And he shall serve you and work for you until the year of Jubilee. Remember, year of Jubilee? Freedom. Then he shall depart from you. He and his children with him shall return to his own family. He shall return to the possession of his fathers. So he's free. He's free to go back, right? He's free to go back. Why does God do that? For they are my servants, not your servants. They are working for me. They are my people that I have brought out of the land of Egypt. And so they shall not be as slaves even when they are in Israel, the land that God has given. God's people will never be slaves again. And so you don't make your brethren a slave. That's the principle. Because you need to treat them with dignity, with respect, with fear of God. That's how God wants them to be treated. Verse 43. You shall not rule over him with rigor. 43 tells us you don't, how should you say, tread. You don't dominate him, okay? Do not dominate him. And with act of violence, right? The picture that comes to mind would be like the triads, the gangster. They seem to own you and they'll do anything to you and anything with you because they own you. So God says, you do not own them. You don't dominate them. You don't make their life miserable. And what should you do? You shall fear your God. Be afraid of God because these are people of God. And as for your male and female slaves whom you may have, from the nations that are around you, meaning these are the non-Israelites, from them you may buy male and female slaves. So if you want slaves, these are the people around you who are very poor, but they are not Israelites. Moreover, you may buy the children of the strangers who dwell among you and their families who are with you, which they beget in your land, and they shall become your property. So in those days, you can actually have slaves and maid servants and male servants and female servants to actually serve you for life, right? To serve you for life. But not your brethren. The rule is this: You may take them as an inheritance for your children after you, meaning after you die, your children can inherit them as a possession, and they shall be your permanent slaves. But regarding your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not dominate. That's what the word. Over them with violence. So don't do that. Okay. Now, does it mean that you can treat the non-Israelites badly? And the answer is no. Right? The whole principle when you have servants and slaves and hired hands is respect of life, and where as well as dignity. And so particularly for the Israelites, being poor is not to die. Being poor means you need to work harder to pay off, but you still have your dignity. Now, if a sojourner, now sometimes these non-Israelites who live among you becomes rich. Well, just now we talk about Israelites become poor. Now these aliens who are non-Israelites, they become rich. And one of your brethren, the Israelite, becomes poor and sells himself to the stranger or sojourner close to you, or to a member of the stranger's family. Now that's a revision, a different scenario. Now, the one who is helping them or buying out their debt is a non-Israelite. And so after he is sold, he may be redeemed again, and that's the law. That's the law. Because an alien can never own an Israelite. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle's son may buy him out. Okay? Anyone who is next of kin in his family may redeem him. So kinsman redeemer is here. Kinsman redeemer. Or if he's able, he may redeem himself. Verse 50. Thus he shall reckon with him who bought him, the alien, the stranger. The price of his release shall be according to the number of years from the year that he was sold to him until the year of Jubilee. Now, let me just point out to you the principle here. It is the same in any case. At any point in time, there is a Jubilee. And this would be a period of 50 years. Okay? So at any point in time that the person is sold, then you count the balance of years. That's what it means. Okay? That's what it means. It shall be according to the time of the hired servant for him. If there are still many years remaining, according to them, he shall repay the price. Because there is a number of years more, then he can redeem. Okay? Verse 52. If there remain but a few years until the year of Jubilee, then he shall reckon with him, discuss with him. According to his years, he shall repay him the price of his redemption. Just negotiate. There is negotiation. Okay? He shall be with him as a yearly hired servant, and he shall not rule with rigor. That's the same thing. It doesn't matter whether you are an Israelite or non-Israelite. The rule is this: you cannot dominate the poor with violence. And if he is not redeemed in these years, then he shall be released in the year of Jubilee. he and his children with him. So the year of Jubilee is very important. When you hit the year of Jubilee, it's freedom for everyone. Finally, verse 55. For the children of Israel are servants to me. They are my servants. They are my servants whom I brought out of the land of Israel. I am the Lord your God. See, throughout the book of Leviticus, you always see these words. I am the Lord. I am the Lord your God. And this is very important. Why does God keep repeating himself? It is to remind the Israelites, hey, look, I am your God. I am the one who is reigning over you. You just listen to me. These are the rules I give you because I want you to treat people with dignity. How you want me to treat you, you should treat others the same. And so you notice in the minds of the teachers of the law, they always look at these principles that God is a just God. God respects life. The fact that he saw the cries of the children of Israel in Egypt suffering, he doesn't want the children of Israel to do the same to others, especially when you treat the poor. Because when you are poor, you're already down on the ground, humiliated. You do not humiliate them any further. In fact, you should help that person regain his dignity. And how would he regain his dignity? Year of Jubilee. Let them go. And with this, we end chapter 25. Any questions?
Pastor, when Joseph was sold to the Egyptians, is it Egyptians? Yeah.
He was sold to the Midianites who then sold him into Egypt.
Yeah. We never hear the story of him being redeemed.
No. Why? Is because that is in Genesis. We are now in Leviticus. So when we do Bible study, we need to look at the chronology of time. So God only gave these rules that we read here in chapter 25. And these rules are actually meant for the Israelites. Joseph at his time were not Israelites. They were children of his father Jacob, who were also called Israel. But they were not Israelite as a nation. Now that they have come out of Egypt going into the land where God is giving them, these rules are to govern the way of life, basically. So that they do not mistreat each other. The dignity of man is very, very important to God. Okay. We shall continue with 26 and then end with 27 on Wednesday. All right.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.